Welcome back. This is our last video on Cronenberg, and we'll jump straight in with eXistenZ.
The only one of his I've seen on the big screen, which messed with my little teenage head, but I loved it.
Yes, I have very fond memories of seeing that, the movies with my dad.
That's the one that first made me think more about the simulation theory, I guess. Like, you know, what is reality? Are we in a video game?
Yes,
our universe behaves a lot like a computer game, actually.
Because you were a gamer at the time as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, but I only like survival horror and Fallout. Like, I've played some ESO, but it's a bit too fantasy. I know, I like Silent Hill, I like Resident Evil.
Those two are the only games that I've ever liked, that I've played. And I'm not really a gamer at all.
No. But yeah, so I mean, like, I'm very much, like, I only play certain games. But, yeah, I mean, I'm very familiar with the whole video game console. I used to play a lot on my computer, actually, so I can't say that. But ever since...
You play a lot on your phone.
I do, and
it's hard to even talk to you.
And they're just silly little phone games, you know. You should see me when I've actually got a console. Like, I'm gone forever. Actually, no, it's quite scary, actually. I'm just like, leave me alone inside this universe. But ever since I was really young, the very first Doom came out, and I was at some friend's house, and like I started playing it, and just the day disappeared. No one bothered me, and I finished it. And like the first time I ever played a game, which was all about killing Nazis, I finished that, and I just got obsessed with those sort of things.
I met the guy that did the soundtrack to Doom in Atlanta. He was
the original Doom video game. What? That's iconic.
Yeah.
Crazy.
It was at this party. Yeah.
Nice. Wow.
He was a friend of my fiance at the time's mother's, like my fiance's mother's friend.
That's so cool. Like that.
He offered me a job, actually.
No, Castle Wolfenstein. Sorry, I'm thinking of Castle Wolfenstein, not Doom, not Doom. Castle Wolfenstein was the first one I played, but then Doom was also one that I played a lot. But yeah, sorry, I just can't believe I got that mixed up. I'm not a proper gamer.
How dare you?
No, I'm not a proper one.
I wouldn't know. I don't know anything about games.
I do like them, and I do like. I'm really looking forward to VR, virtual reality. Also, there's this thing on Reddit that I discovered a few years back called Mother Horse Eyes, which is one of the most interesting pieces of fiction, or even maybe non-fiction, that I've ever read, and it just so fits into the Cronenberg universe and Crimes of the Future. But they can't possibly have known about Cronenberg's script, so I don't know, it's this huge mystery around these stories that started coming out of Reddit, and I won't go on about too much, but it fits in really well with eXistenZ and the idea of virtual realities and sort of living full time in a virtual reality while being sort of cocooned in a life support system. So cool and such an interesting concept. So I just wanted to just tell people, if you want to look into Mother Horse Eyes, and because you really like eXistenZ or Crimes of the Future, that's something I would highly suggest. Kind of links in with it very beautifully.
I hope it gets published, like in a book form sometime.
Yeah, there's a whole mystery around that. I'm actually getting goosebumps thinking about it, like major goosebumps. There's something very interesting about that story, and whoever may have written it, still a mystery to this day. A lot of people thought it was a publicity stunt for a new novel, but then it was never released. So I'm like, what if this is someone who can see beyond space and time and trying to warn us? Like, shit. Yeah. So eXistenZ is about a video game. So consoles, because I love consoles, they have these consoles that are really fleshy, and the way they flick them and touch them is kind of like strangely erotic and kind of, but the way that when gamers get into their games and their console, it becomes an extension of themselves. So I got really excited seeing these crazy fleshy consoles that plug into your body. They're fueled by your body. I mean, any game would be like, oh my, this is before we could have cordless controllers as well, but even with cordless controllers, you have to plug them in, they run out of battery, and it's such a pain. But imagine if you had a console that you could fuel with your own body, and it was a part of your body, and that idea is just like, wow, why don't we have that yet? I would totally sign up to that. I'd get a port in my back, and I would have that sucker plugged in. It would be amazing. So it's all about VR, about a game within a game within a game, about when you are a character within this game, how it starts to change your personality. It's so ahead of its time. Like, sort of RPG games at the time were pretty primitive. I thought they were pretty hi-fi, but they were quite primitive. Actually, I've played quite a lot of games now, I think about it. So I'm not going to play that many games, but I kind of have. So, but like these little moments that are like any gamer will recognize, where the characters just kind of like sit there like this in this sort of repetitive loop until you say feed them the next line of dialogue, which will help expand the story. There's only certain options you can do, and leaning into these characters that they're becoming. It's just, yeah, that's like that's another one, like long live the new flesh kind of idea. Just it's a proper body thing going on, like bodies, machinery, technology, the interaction of both, almost a sexual connection with technology, a little bit like Videodrome in that respect. There's like these really cool moments, like, so Jude Law, who's fantastic in this, by the way. Jude Law, I didn't really like him until
I do like him.
After I saw him in eXistenZ, I was like, Jude Law, actually.
Well, what about Gattaca?
Yeah, but this is before I saw Gattaca.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I always just thought Jude Law was like this pretty boy actor. And then when I saw him in eXistenZ, I realised he was much more than that. And there's this amazing scene where he's like eating this disgusting looking food. He's like, I don't know why I'm eating this. And he slowly starts to pull out bits and put them together. And it's like this bone gun that shoots human teeth. And
it's a bit like a spy movie. It's like, this is the closest thing to David Cronenberg's Bond movie.
In a way. Well, yeah, like a lot of games. The thing is about a lot of good games is they have really fantastic storylines that you get really invested in. I mean, that's kind of the greatest games have those sort of elements.
Do you remember when this came out? There was a big controversy surrounding Salman Rushdie's Satanic Verses novel, and yeah, it was sort of quite political, and there was a fatwa issued on him or something, if that's how you say it. And Cronenberg based this story of Allegra Geller on Salman Rushdie.
Death to Allegra Geller.
Yeah, the same thing.
Wow, okay.
So that's where it comes from.
Wow,
you should look it
up.
I
should. I don't know what I know about that.
Yeah.
She's great in it. Oh, she's such a good choice. And it's got Ian Holm, isn't it, a little role in it?
Yeah, he's great. I know, with this ridiculous accent.
And there's all these mutant amphibians.
Yeah.
And they look so cool and they're so cute. There's a little tiny bit of CGI, but it's one of the only examples.
Oh, it's done really well, though.
It's actually done really well, but most of it is totally practical.
I like 90s CGI. If it's done a certain way.
It's done. There's nothing. Yeah, the CGI action is actually.
It's a lot less noticeable as CGI than contemporary CGI in Marvel movies and stuff.
Well, it's only like really one little moment where there's like this little creature.
Yeah, I'm just talking about 90s CGI.
Yeah, it's totally. Stuff. I'm actually okay with it, but the practical effects in eXistenZ, it's probably arguably one of my favourite. I mean, I'm talking, I love The Thing and all of that, but just the stuff that goes on at eXistenZ, and I always just assumed more movies like this was going to get made, like this wasn't going to be like a one-off experience, but there just isn't anything else like this, which makes me really sad, except for Mother Horse Eyes, which is not a visual thing, but you see it in your head. Gosh. But yeah, I was kind of like, couldn't wait to see more films like this, because I was like, this is the future of cinema, and then it hasn't been until Crimes of the Future sort of returned, the great return.
Willem Dafoe is also in it, and this great cameo as Gas.
This greasy gas station attendant that puts in an infected port.
Some other, I mean, Cronenberg's Canadian, so Don McKellar, who's in Crimes of the Future, he is in this as well, with Sarah Polley as the people who are kind of what would you call it? It's like not a seminar, a gaming sort of thing where they offer it to gamers to try out.
Yeah, it's like a trial, like a live trial sort of thing.
Yeah, so they sort of present that.
It's so tense and exhilarating and fun. Like it's quite an adventure. I think it's a very adventurous feel.
That's what I mean by the Bond thing.
Yeah, and it's got lots of twists and turns, and oh man, what a wild ride! Fantastic fun.
Did you know that Jennifer Jason Leigh was shooting Eyes Wide Shut at this time? Well, that's what I was like. What the fuck?
Where is she in there?
Is she in there? And then they had, like with any Kubrick fucking film, they had to do reshoots because he takes so many years to make his films that she had to go back and do reshoots. But she was already planned. She'd already been scheduled to do eXistenZ, so she actually ended up saying, sorry Kubrick, I have to do eXistenZ. So they got someone else to reshoot her role.
Crazy.
Which is quite cool, because I mean, I like Eyes Wide Shut, but I like eXistenZ more.
Yeah, and Cronenberg's a much better director to work with, like any day of the week. But then again,
his shoots sound really fun. He says that there's a real lightness on the set. Everyone's joking. And, like, they only do one take, so that he's not like this megalomaniac director that's saying take 500 or something.
Kubrick is notorious for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, I love them both so much. But yeah, wow. I would never.
Very different.
Yeah, very different.
Yes, and the score, and this is a character in itself, a beautifully insidious, minimally menacing score. Very, lots of strings. So some electronics in it as well. The look as well, it has this beautiful, it's probably my favourite point in the 90s of just the way, the sort of warmness of the film stock. There's a cool reference in the film to Philip K. Dick as well, where they are in a motel and they go out and buy some food, and the bag of food says Perky Pats. It's a reference, I think, to the 3 Stigmata of Palmer Eldrick, or whatever the title is. I haven't read that book, so that's why I don't know. But yeah, he's obviously a big
he loves
PKD
Philip K. Dick as well.
fan.
Yeah, sure. Who wouldn't be? No. So yeah, that film, my goodness, golly gracious, I just wish there were more films like that, but there's not, and it's just absolutely one of a kind, and absolutely just flawless, freaking flawless.
I'd probably give it the same as The Fly, maybe a little bit more or something, like about the same, so like 4.5.
I'd give it a 5. It's like a 9.5 out of 10 heart.
Yeah,
Cronenberg films is like, it's like Cronenberg, David Lynch, Lars, Tarkovsky, like, I rate a lot of those ones really, really highly. But then again, Cronenberg is, as we're about to sort of talk about, he's done a few films that I actually just don't really care for.
Cronenberg?
Yeah, Cronenberg.
Well, yeah.
He's not one of those directors where I love
Fast
absolutely
Company,
everything he does. Whereas like Lynch, it's only one. I'm like, well, Inland Empire's not so great. Lars, I pretty much like everything Lars has done, to be honest. But yeah, but Cronenberg has done quite a few
Cosmopolis,
films.
you didn't like that.
Yeah, I do think maybe I could try revisiting. I can't really be bothered. I don't know, it just bored me.
Maps to the Stars is another good one, like, to revisit.
I think maybe I need to revisit it. But that's, like those two I just didn't really care for that much. Which means, we're
not going to focus as much on these next ones. We're just going to say the titles.
Say the titles.
We'll say what we thought.
We watched Spider last night.
Which is the next one. So.
It is very good, but it's very, very
it's very
gruesome.
bleak,
It's
very
so
British,
and it looks
very
so
grey.
British and grey, and
but it does have some beautiful, bleakly and beautiful interiors by Carol Spear.
And very like reality warping what is reality.
Yeah.
It's very Freudian.
Yes.
Like the Oedipus kind of syndrome.
He is very Freudian, Cronenberg. He's obviously read a lot of Freud.
Yeah. So Ralph Fiennes, he's great, but like Cronenberg, there are some of his films that I don't adore. And I'm going to be honest about it. But the ones that I do adore, I want to explode. I love them so much.
Yep.
So, but yeah, Spider's one of those ones. It's just like, I don't know. It's just so sad.
That's why it's so exciting, this moment of Crimes of the Future coming out, because we're allowed to enjoy him returning to those films that we love so much. That we really love.
Dangerous Method, though, that is a really, really cool film.
That a lot.
Big fan of that. I mean, I'm all about the Jung. Me and my best friend, we got into Jung when we were quite young, and I studied psychology briefly at university. But it continued to be really interested in psychology and just keep studying it in my own way without paying tens of thousands of dollars for the privilege. Jung is such an interesting...
It's introduced Jung to me, actually.
Yeah.
Which is, I didn't really... of course I
I
knew
was
who
the
he
one I
was.
was like, how come you haven't read any Jung? It really fits into...
Well, I always found him a bit too mystical or something from what I'd heard, but he's very interesting.
He's very interesting, and he was sort of like almost like a son to Freud, who wasn't doing as well.
Also, sort of competitors, like in the later stages.
Well, Jung kind of had like a rich wife, and he could kind of do whatever he wanted. Whereas Freud had to work very hard. It's a very different dynamic, and they were very, very close at one stage, and then they kind of grew apart. So A Dangerous Method is based all on their letters to each other, so it's thoroughly researched. And you've got Keira Knightley, who I normally can't stand, who's actually fantastic, and she's sort of like this, she's got this like thing she's just kind of like very neurotic. And
you got in a big argument with someone about the chin thing, because you liked it, and
I thought it was accurate and realistic. But then this other person said that it was like this like grotesque exaggeration, blah blah blah, and we had a big fight. But it turns out she's just got like feelings about things.
Anyway,
I was like, don't judge her because of her performance, but she hated Keira Knightley for that performance. But and I mean, and the woman that it's based on, she's a real person, and what happened to her in the film was very similar. She went on to be an incredible psychotherapist herself. So she went from being someone who just couldn't even function, that was so messed up, and the talk therapy that Freud began, because they didn't have anything like that before, continued by the work that Jung did with her, made her into a functional person. It's quite amazing. It's like the new era of psychoanalysis. Before that, mental health was treated just so
originally
badly.
called psychanalysis, but then Jung suggested I think that Freud called it psychoanalysis and Jung wanted to call it psychanalysis to make it not sound as like
scary
against the patients or something.
They both had a lot of empathy for their patients, because Jung really overstepped his relationship with this particular woman. But yeah, that's like, it's sad because Jung to me always seemed like a very ethical person. I had a lot of respect for him.
I think he was more ethical. Really, Freud has some pretty fucked up.
I'm not a fan of Freud, man.
But I've been reading him
like,
more recently.
Really?
Like I just got in the mail the other day, Freud Reader, which is this big sort of book, and I've got about 5 other books of his, The Uncanny and Beyond the Pleasure Principle and things like that. And, you know, they're always very interesting to read. And I think he actually aspired to not just be like a, you know, a clinicist, but like a literary figure, you know, like he really admired detective fiction, and the
mystery of the human mind.
Yeah, like that Dora case history of hysteria, that's structured almost like a detective novel or something. Yeah,
he had some interesting relationships with women himself, with a very strange woman at one stage, which I think had quite a big impact on what he said. But I just can't stand his concepts.
He said, like
you
recently I was reading something in the 3 theses on sexuality, and there's one on infant sexuality where he says that young children like to hold in their stops themselves going from defecating because they liked rubbing their feces against their tailbone to masturbate.
Where the fuck do you get this shit from, bro? Like, really?
He sort of plucks it out of thin air.
Are you okay there?
It's pretty interesting to read.
It's a sexual thing from the mother, and I'm like, I breastfeed my kids. It's not sexual. It's uncomfortable. It's like, oh god, I'm using my body to actually feed you. This is
a very male
weird
thing who hasn't.
I was like, you have no idea. It's like, how dare you assume that this is something we get pleasure out of? Like, god, you know, it's like it's not a comfortable thing. It's something you do because, like, it's supposed to be best for your babies, so you do it. So his perspective is so freaking weird. He's freaking weird ideas. But I love Jung. Freaking love him, I think. And I like the fact that he explored sort of the mystic potentialities as well as science. And he coined like all these really important phrases, like synchronicity. That was Jung. His dream work is very fascinating.
His red book is really cool. I bought that recently. It's really and he even illustrated it as well. Really cool drawings. He's a paintings.
Very, very, very cool person. Jung, really, really amazing. And Freud is turned his way, but I think he's just a really weird guy with some massive issues. I don't know where he got them. It's like, you're telling on yourself with this stuff, Freud.
We could do a whole separate video on this film actually, because of the ideas behind it.
So that's probably my favourite post eXistenZ one until Crimes of the Future.
I think it's the strongest one.
It's a great film in a lot of ways. So
what would you rate that?
Actually, it's very, very, very good in so many ways. And as anyone who enjoys psychology as much as I do, I'd say about a 4 at least. 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 4.
I think it's good, solid 8 out of 10 hearts. I will continue to rewatch it. I think it's fantastic. Same. I really do.
And it's got a great performance too by Sarah Gadon. She's really interesting. Like, I've been watching it and going back and watching it. Yeah, she is very, but she's a real cinephile as well.
Yeah, she's a cool person. And she was in that one by
Cosmopolis. She played the girlfriend.
And also, what was that one where she like turns into a spider?
She's in Maps to the Stars as well.
Yeah, but there was a
Enemy.
Enemy.
Denis Villeneuve.
She's so good in that. Yeah. She's so beautiful that you think, you know, like.
Why isn't she a big star? Like, she's great.
She's not only is she absolutely stunning, she's a very good actor, and she's very intelligent. Like, you kind of think, like, when I first saw her, I was like, well, she's just because she's a beautiful woman, but she's so much more than that. She's very interesting. very, very interesting. So like one of those like mega talents, but I don't know why she's not like a big household name. She's amazing. Quite scary sometimes, but I like that about her.
So Cosmopolis is next, and it's based on a book by Don DeLillo, who I haven't read yet, but I've got
maybe it would help if we read it.
I've got Underworld and White Noise, and I plan to read White Noise. I think that's the one that people say is his best book. He's got a very distinctive sort of writing style, apparently, and it's like the way that the actors act in this film is almost Bessonian or something. It's like very it's almost no emotion, and very sort of wooden, purposely so. And I think that's probably based on his literary style, but I don't know yet. I do like the look of it as well, but yeah, it's definitely not a favourite of mine.
It's kind of a little boring and like almost verging on kind of pretentious. I don't want to say that word, but this is something about it that just was not Cronenberg to me.
I always look forward to giving it another try, but when I do, I'm a bit disappointed.
I found it quite boring too.
Yeah, it's quite boring.
Robert Pattinson's great.
It's worth it for this one scene at the end with Paul Giamatti, who's so obsessed with his character, is so obsessed with Robert Pattinson's character that he wants to kill him, but he loves him so much that he wants to kill him.
So it's really interesting.
He's trying to assassinate him, basically, and there's this whole 15-minute scene between them, and that's like, you should just watch that scene.
Yeah, just watch that scene if you don't force yourself to watch the whole thing. But it's a really interesting story about obsession and stalkers. And I'm sure
there's more than that.
Sort of,
sort of about. I mean, he plays this almost like not Wall Street sort of
it's
figure.
Almost quite an anti-capitalist film as well.
And
I love that about it, but I just couldn't connect with it. I just really struggled. But then again, I'm not a big fan of the writer. Maybe if I was, or I'd put more effort into it. But who knows? Maybe in the future I'll love it.
There's that cool bit of trivia too, where Paul Giamatti and Robert Pattinson both separately, without any knowledge of what the other was doing, both ended up randomly kind of looking at an interview with Jeffrey Dahmer on YouTube, and then one of them said on set, "Hey, I just did this research with Jeffrey Dahmer," and they looked at the exact same video. It's so bizarre.
That's freaking. I love it. Dahmer is everywhere.
So yeah, rating this, I'd probably give it, actually, they're very different films, but I'd probably give it like maybe the same as like The Brood or something, or maybe even like Shivers or something. Not very much.
About a 6.
I do like the next one, Maps to the Stars, a lot more.
I need to see it again. I wasn't crazy about it, but it'll
get better. Like when I rewatch it, I like it a lot more. I'm just laughing all the way through.
I do love how it just absolutely takes the piss out of like Hollywood brats, and we've got an amazing performance by
John Cusack.
And who's the lady?
Mia Wasikowska.
Julianne
Moore.
Julianne Moore. She is just such a dick. She nails it. She nails it.
There's even scenes with her sitting on her toilet, like taking a shit, farting and stuff.
I absolutely loved her performance and her portrayal, and I feel like Julianne Moore was like relishing the opportunity to kind of like let off a little bit of steam about the sort of people she inevitably must encounter in Hollywood. She just nailed that. It's fun, but there's this terrible fire CGE scene at the end that made me actually very angry and kind of hate the film.
I know.
Like, it's so bad.
But don't look at don't base it on that. It actually is one of his better later ones. I think, compared to Cosmopolis.
Sure.
And it's got a great screenplay by Bruce Wagner, who wrote Wild Palms and has written novels and stuff. He's got a very interesting mind. So. But yeah, that with Crimes of the Future brings us up to date. But
there was a history of violence and Eastern Promises, but they're very different once again. We better quickly just really quickly.
We need to mention those.
Eastern Promises.
A Russian mafia sort of.
I did really like that. I liked that quite a lot.
That has some interesting tattooing in it.
It does. That is quite a cool movie. I do like that. It's more closer to what I love about Cronenberg than this other stuff that he'd done. Great
performance too by Vincent Cassel. Who actually is in Cronenberg's next film, The Shrouds. He's the main actor.
Very
so I'm really excited about that. He's also on A Dangerous Method. He plays like that other patient who's like a lesser sort of character. He's not in it as much, but he was in Irreversible as well. Not by Cronenberg, but
it's so weird. I just suddenly remembered that I loved eXistenZ so much. I used to give my cars names when I first got cars, and I called my car Allegra after Allegra.
Oh wow, cool.
I used to drive around and I'm like, I'm hanging out with Allegra today. We're going to drive over a hill. I used to like sing in the car and like talk to her. But that's how much I love eXistenZ. Sorry, I like totally remembered that car. It is no longer with us. But, yeah.
History of Violence is really good too. That's based on a graphic novel, and great.
I don't like it as much. Well. There's just something about it.
It's, no, I don't like it as much. Because I mean, you know, we'd watched like eXistenZ, and we were hoping for something probably more like that, and then he releases this film that seems more like a drama, you know, or a sort of gangster film.
It's just not really.
It doesn't feel like Cronenberg. At the time, it didn't. I liked it, but I was disappointed.
I was kind of bored at times, which is never a good sign.
Which is why it's so exciting that he's done Crimes of the Future now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I do think A History of Violence is quite awesome. I did really enjoy it. It's kind of, Viggo is fantastic in it. It's kind of quite a creepy story about, it's like almost quite a paranoid story, but then like the paranoia is about a real thing. So yeah, I do like that one quite a lot. I would give that about at least a 3.5 maybe. Yeah,
I would give it a 3.5.
So about a 7 out of 10 for that one. And but A History of Violence. Oh, so Eastern Promises. I always get Eastern Promises not so much. I'd give it like a 3.
I like them both.
I love Naomi Watts. Yeah. I loved her in Huckabees. She's great in this.
It's a depressing film.
It's depressing, and it's just,
You don't like your very London set films.
I have no interest in seeing Europe. It just seems too cold and grey. Maybe the arts.
You just say that you're from French blood, and you don't even want to see.
I do want to go to the south of France. And I wouldn't, the museums and the art galleries and all that sort of stuff would be fine. It's just like, I just don't really like, I'm a very nature girl. But then again, I do appreciate really big futuristic cities. And when I lived in Bangkok, I actually freaking loved living in Bangkok in the late 80s. That was so freaking cool. It was so sci-fi compared to little old Christchurch. But yeah, I just don't like cold, grim, austere looking places. I find them quite depressing. I think I was thinking about what's the most me and my son were watching that Dogma 95 film about the 5 obstructions between Lars von Trier and this, I can't remember the other guy's name, but they were giving these other obstructions, and he Lars says, where's the most depressing place you can think of in the world? So of course we paused it, and me and my son sort of discussed what we thought was the most depressing place in the world. He hasn't been many places, but I said straight
Manchester.
I was like, get England or Scotland. Just, that's the most depressing place I could ever imagine. Whereas like the other director actually sort of went to the slums of the red light district in Calcutta. But I actually kind of find that colourful and interesting, even if there's some terrible human suffering. There's just something so grim and scary to me about like England and Scotland and it's like Christchurch, but just bigger and colder more of the time. Like, no thanks. I'd rather just at least in Christchurch we've got access to like the peninsula, and we've got oceans and rivers and stuff, and we can kind of get out of our grim little bubble. And it takes 45 minutes to go somewhere beautiful. So that's why I can handle living here, I guess, without going completely bonkers, but it's hard.
So we should end these 4 Cronenberg videos on a very high note, in that he's, with Crimes of the Future, more interest again in his direction has allowed him to direct another film. So there's this new film called The Shrouds. And the synopsis is, Karsh, played by Vincent Cassel, is an innovative businessman and grieving widower who builds a device to connect with the dead inside a burial shroud. So it sounds exciting.
Ito-ish. I like it.
It does, and Cronenberg wrote it as well. So it's another. It's a newer written one, so that'll be really exciting.
Such a good writer, Cronenberg. We love you. Sci-fi stuff is just so excellent.
Very exciting that he's coming back to writing now, because all of these other films, as you know from what we've been saying, he's adapted them from plays or novels, or had other writers like Bruce Wagner to come in. So, but
we think his best work
comes
from the
he
mind.
Quite often says, especially when people ask why he hasn't written stuff, he says, I'm lazy.
What if he? I don't even
probably
know.
Is.
It's really hard to take anything he says seriously, because he's quite a mischievous sort of guy. He's got such a cool personality. He's very laid back. He's confident without being cocky, and he's quite mischievous, I think. he doesn't take himself too seriously, even though like he's seriously awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you for staying with us over this. Let us know what you think of his films, which one's your favourite, whether you've seen Crimes of the Future, whether you're gonna. Yeah. So that's us for another week.
Don't know what we're doing next time, but the new flesh.
The new flesh. See you later.
Bye.
Bye, next week.